I realized my own family had erased me the moment I was locked out of my house with medical records saying I was unstable and a sister who convinced everyone I was losing my mind. But what they didn't know was she had been moving my money through internal accounts and forging my name, and once my lawyer traced it, it escalated to federal fraud and financial crimes because at 6:42 a.m., agents showed up at her office with a warrant, and by the end of it, she was facing prison while everything she stole was forced back into my name. This wasn't just revenge. This was legal revenge. And I'm Marion, and this is how my own family tried to erase me and how I took my life back piece by piece. Chapter 1. I remember that night like it never really ended. November 18th, 2024. Cold rain slashing sideways through Cedar Falls, wind rattling gutters and loose signs like something angry had been set loose. I had just gotten home from work, tired, thinking about reheating leftovers and calling it a night. When I pushed the door open, Douglas was already there in the hallway, standing too still, like he'd been waiting a while. Something felt off right away. Not loud, not obvious, just wrong. "Marilyn, we need to talk." I dropped my bag and tried to shake it off with a small laugh. "You look like you're about to fire me. What is going on?" He did not smile, not even a little. "You are not safe here anymore," he said. I stared at him, waiting for the part where he corrected himself. Not safe? What does that even mean? He stepped closer, careful, like I might spook. "You have been forgetting things. You went to a doctor and did not tell me. You've been hiding it." My stomach tightened. "I have not been to any doctor, Doug." He shook his head slowly, like he expected that answer. "You left the stove on last week. You asked me the same thing 3 times in one night. This morning, you could not remember where your keys were." "That happens to people." "Not like this," he said. "Not like my mom." That hit harder than anything else. His mother had slipped away piece by piece from 2012 to 2018. I had watched it happen with him. "I am not your mother." "Then explain the bills." "What bills?" He walked into the kitchen and came back with a stack of papers. He pressed them into my hands. My name at the top, my address, neurology visits, cognitive testing, a total that made my chest feel tight. "This is not mine," I said. "I have never seen any of this." He looked at me like that was exactly what he expected. "You do not remember." "No," I said, sharper now. "I never went to these appointments. I never signed anything." But I could feel it shifting under me. Not reality. Him. He had already decided. He moved toward the door. "Doug, wait, what are you doing?" He pulled an overnight bag from the closet, mine. I stared at it, a quick flash of doubt cutting through me. Did I pack that? No. I would remember that. I had to remember that. He set it by the door and opened it. Rain pushed inside, cold and loud. "You need to leave," he said. I just stood there. "You're kicking me out? Right now?" "Until we figure out what's going on with you." There it was again. Not anger, certainty. "This is not real," I said. "You're making a decision without even listening to me." "I have been listening," he said, "and that's the problem." For a second, I thought he might stop, that something in him would break and he'd see how far this had gone. It did not happen. He picked up the bag and set it outside, on the porch. Then he stepped back in and shut the door. The lock clicked. I stood there, staring at it, waiting, counting without meaning to. 10, 20, 30. Nothing. I knocked. At first, light, then harder. "Doug, open the door. This is not funny." No answer. Rain soaked through my coat, ran down my neck, cold and steady. My hands started to shake. "Please," I said, pressing my palm against the wood, "just talk to me." Silence. I stepped back slowly, not because I wanted to, because I understood something had already broken, and I was the last one to notice. I picked up the bag and walked down the steps into the storm. No plan, just movement. Past the mailbox, down the driveway, onto the street. The neighborhood looked wrong in the rain, like I had stepped into someone else's version of it. My mind kept circling one thing. He believed it. Douglas was not careless. He did not jump to conclusions. If he believed I was sick, someone had given him something that looked real. And someone had been around enough to do exactly that. Talia. My sister's name came up before I could stop it. She had been around more lately, asking questions, watching me in a way I had brushed off as concern. Now it felt different. Too interested, too precise. I kept walking. Water filled my shoes. My fingers went numb. A car rushed past, spraying cold water against my legs, but I barely felt it. What if he had already changed the locks for good? What if I never got back inside? What if everything I owned was already out of my reach? The questions stacked up, faster and heavier. At the intersection near the highway, my legs started to give out. The streetlights blurred in the rain. I tried to steady myself, but the ground shifted under me. A horn sounded somewhere close. Then nothing. When I opened my eyes again, the ceiling above me was too white, too bright. A steady beep filled the room. My body felt heavy, like it belonged to someone else. A police officer stood near the bed. Douglas was a few steps behind him. "You're awake," the officer said. I pushed myself up slightly. My head throbbed. Where am I? St. Vincent Medical Center, Douglas said. Why am I here? You were found near the highway, the officer said. Do you remember what happened? I nodded slowly. I remember walking. Douglas stepped closer. His voice dropped. I know you don't want to admit it, but you need help. I looked at him. Really looked at him. There was no anger, no hesitation, just fear and belief. He was not pretending. He was not guessing. He was sure. Something in my chest tightened, then went still, because I knew I had not been to any doctor. I knew I had not signed those papers. I knew I had not forgotten who I was, which meant this was not confusion. This was not a mistake. This was built, carefully, quietly, on purpose. And the worst part wasn't the storm or the cold or even waking up in that hospital bed. It was standing there, looking at the man I had trusted for years and realizing someone had managed to replace me in his mind with a version that didn't exist. Someone had been feeding him a story, someone close enough to make it stick. And I had a feeling I already knew who that was. I lay back against the pillow, staring at the ceiling, letting that thought settle in. Because whatever this was, it wasn't over. It was just getting started. Chapter 2. 3 weeks earlier, it didn't feel serious. It felt like small things, the kind you shrug off because everyone forgets things now and then. But Douglas didn't shrug it off. He started asking questions in a way that didn't feel normal. Do you remember what we had for dinner last night? I looked at him, a little thrown off. Yeah, pasta. You said it needed more salt. He nodded, slow, like he was checking a box. The next day, he asked again. Same question, same tone. I frowned. You already asked me that. He didn't react, just watched me, then typed something into his phone. That was the first moment something felt off. Not wrong enough to panic, just enough to sit in the back of my mind. After that, it didn't stop. You left your keys on the counter. You asked me twice about the water bill. You forgot to call Lena back. Each time he said it the same way, calm, certain, like he wasn't talking to me, he was documenting me. At first, I brushed it off. Work had been hard on him lately. Horizon Logistics was cutting staff, piling work onto whoever stayed. I figured this was stress leaking out. But stress doesn't look like this. This felt organized. Around the same time, Talia started coming by more. My younger sister had always been close, but this was different. She showed up without calling, brought groceries we didn't ask for, sat with Douglas at the kitchen table like they had their own rhythm. Whenever I walked in, the conversation would stop. "You okay?" she asked one afternoon, tilting her head like she was trying to read something on my face. "I'm fine." She smiled, soft, patient, too patient. "I'm just worried about you." "Worried about what?" She didn't answer that, just kept watching me. "You seem tired lately. You've been repeating yourself. You don't sound like yourself." At the time, I thought she was overthinking. Now I know she wasn't thinking at all. She was setting something up. The call from my daughter came late on a Tuesday. "Mom, are you okay?" Her voice sounded careful, like she was choosing every word. "Of course I am. What's wrong?" A small pause. "Aunt Talia said you've been forgetting things." She sounded really worried. My chest tightened. "What exactly did she tell you?" "Just that you've been acting different, that maybe you should get checked." I turned slightly, looking toward the living room. Douglas didn't look up, but I could feel him listening. "I'm fine," I said. "I promise." "Okay," Lena said, but she didn't sound sure. After that call, the house felt different. Not heavier, just off, like I was missing something everyone else could see. A few days later, Douglas came home early. No hello, no small talk. He walked into the kitchen and dropped a stack of papers on the counter. "We need to talk." I dried my hands and stepped closer. "What is this?" He pushed them toward me. "Medical bills." My name at the top, my address, dates from the past 2 weeks, neurology visits, cognitive testing. At the bottom, the number sat there like it meant something. $28,450. I felt my stomach drop. "Doug," I said slowly, "I have never seen these." He didn't hesitate. "You went to these appointments. You signed these forms." "No," I said, "I didn't." I flipped through the pages. The signatures looked close enough to pass, but something about them felt wrong. Too careful. I grabbed my phone and called the number printed on the bill. It rang once, then a recording. "This number is no longer in service." I tried again. Same thing. I looked at him. "The number doesn't work." He crossed his arms. "Maybe you wrote it down wrong." "It's printed right here." I grabbed my keys. "I'm going to the address." The drive across town felt longer than it should have. Rain blurred the streetlights, everything looking dull and distant. The building was real, a medical complex with a directory in the lobby. I scanned it. Suite 214. It wasn't listed. I went upstairs anyway. The door was locked, a faded sign taped to the glass. "Closed since 2021. I stood there, staring at it. That was when it hit me. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't me forgetting things. Someone had made this. I drove back home, my grip tight on the wheel. Douglas was waiting when I walked in. "Well?" "The office doesn't exist." He frowned, but not with surprise. "Or you went somewhere else and don't remember." "No," I said. "Someone is lying, and it's not me." He shook his head. "I've been reading about this. Early stages can look like this. Denial is part of it." He had already decided I was sick. He didn't ask if I was telling the truth. He didn't even consider it. He was building a case, and I was the one on trial. I felt something shift right then. Not confusion anymore, something sharper. That night, I tried to log into our bank account. Access denied. I tried again. Password incorrect. I looked at him. "Did you change it?" He didn't look up. "I thought it would be better if I handled things for now." Better for who? For us. The words didn't sound like him. An hour later, my email logged me out. When I tried to get back in, the recovery information had been changed. That was the moment it became clear. I had no access to anything. No money, no communication, no way to prove anything. I was still standing in my own house, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. "Doug," I said quietly, "you have to trust me." He looked at me for a second. "I want to, but I can't ignore what I'm seeing." He followed my gaze. The papers on the counter. The version of me someone else had created. I thought about Talia. The way she watched me. The way she spoke to Lena. The way she never answered directly. She didn't look worried. She looked like she was waiting. Waiting for everything to fall into place. This wasn't about memory. This wasn't even about Douglas. Someone was taking my life apart piece by piece, and they had already gotten farther than I realized.
Chapter 3. I barely slept, and when morning came, I stopped pretending I could handle this on my own. By 9, I was sitting across from a lawyer named Ethan Carter in a narrow office that smelled like old paper and burnt coffee. He didn't waste time trying to make me comfortable. He took the documents from my hands and read through them in silence. No reaction, no judgment, just focus. After a minute, he looked up. "Have you ever been to this clinic?" "No." "You're certain?" "I'm certain." He nodded once, like that settled something. "This is fraud," he said, "and very likely forgery." The words landed hard, but not in a bad way. For the first time in weeks, I felt grounded. "So I'm not losing my mind," I said. "No," he replied, "you're being set up." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "What do we do?" "We start pulling at whatever we can verify," he said. "Paper trails, communication, financial movement, people who benefit." People who benefit. I already knew who that was. Before I left, I checked my accounts again. $9,200. That was it. Every step forward meant spending money I might not get back. Every step also meant getting closer to whoever was doing this. At the same time, Lena started pulling away. Calls went unanswered. Messages got short replies, if any. It felt like she was trying not to get involved. Or worse, like she believed them. 4 days later, she showed up at my door. I saw it in her face before she said anything. Something had changed. "Mama, I think something's wrong." I stepped aside and let her in. "What do you mean?" She stood there for a second, gripping her phone. "I didn't want to say anything before because I thought maybe I was overthinking it," she said. "But it doesn't add up." She handed me her phone. Messages from Claire. My sister had been texting her for weeks. Slow, careful messages. Nothing obvious, just enough to shape a story. "Your mom called me earlier and didn't remember what we talked about yesterday. I'm worried about her, but I don't want to scare her. Have you noticed anything strange?" Each message nudged the same idea, that I was slipping, that something was wrong with me. "When did this start?" I asked. "Late October," Lena said. I didn't think much of it at first. "What changed?" She looked at me, her voice quieter now. "I called the clinic." I felt my chest tighten. "And?" No answer, so I looked it up. It's been closed for years. That was when she chose a side. I reached for her hand. "I'm not crazy." "I know," she said. "I should have trusted you sooner." The next morning, I brought everything to Ethan. He went through the messages, slower this time. "This is structured," he said, "not emotional. Someone built this step by step." "I know who." "Maybe," he said, "but we need proof." He tapped the billing badge again. "These are not random templates. They match real billing formats." "Can we trace it?" "We can try." The next 2 days blurred together. Calls, records, databases I didn't understand. On the third day, he called me back in. I found something. I sat down, already bracing. The billing format matches a company called Redbrook Medical Billing. My stomach dropped. "And?" He looked at me carefully. "Your sister works there." I didn't react right away. I didn't need to. I already knew. She didn't just plan this, I said quietly. She timed it. Ethan didn't argue. We're getting close, he said, but we need to be careful. I should have listened. Instead, I made a mistake. I met my friend Denise for coffee that afternoon. I needed someone normal, someone outside of all of this. I told her everything, the bills, the messages, the lawyer, Claire. She listened, her face tight with concern. That's insane, she said. Why would she do that? I don't know, I said, but she is. I told her because I trusted her. That was my mistake. 2 days later, everything spiraled. Ethan called me early. His voice was sharp, urgent. I was already halfway out the door before the call ended. He didn't make me sit. He handed me a document. I looked at it and felt something inside me drop. A quitclaim deed. Filed, recorded, dated November 20th. My name was on it. My signature. Transferring ownership of the house. I shook my head slowly. No, that's not real. The signature is forged, Ethan said, but it's been accepted and recorded. I stared at the paper. That house wasn't just a house. It was every year of my life, every holiday, every late night, every quiet morning. I don't think they just took property, I said quietly. They erased my life. Ethan didn't interrupt. They moved fast, he said, faster than most people would notice. I walked out of his office without saying anything else, sat in my car, hands locked around the steering wheel. For a minute, I let myself think about leaving, starting over somewhere no one knew me. No court, no fight, no more damage. Just walk away and rebuild. It would be easier. Ethan knocked on my window. I hadn't even seen him come out. I rolled it down. If you stop now, he said, they win. I closed my eyes, took a slow breath. Everything up to that point had been fear, confusion, panic, doubt. But sitting there, something shifted. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it just settled. I opened my eyes and looked at him. I'm not running. He nodded once. Good. I sat there a little longer after he walked away. The fear was still there, but it wasn't in charge anymore. Whoever did this thought I would fall apart, thought I would walk away. They were wrong. I looked down at my hands, steady now. I'm going to make them regret this.
Chapter 4. The next 2 weeks stopped feeling like my life. They felt like a case. Ethan moved through it without hesitation. No wasted words, no guesswork. Every piece had to hold up on its own. We started with Lena. She wrote everything down. Every message Claire sent, every call, the way the story had been fed to her slowly, carefully, until it felt real. Ethan read it once, then handed it back. This helps, he said. It shows intent. Next came the hospital records. We requested verification from every provider listed on those bills. The responses came back one by one. No record, no visits, no testing, nothing. Forgery. The handwriting analyst came in 2 days later. He laid my real signature next to the forged ones and pointed out what I couldn't see before. Different pressure, different speed. Someone practiced, he said, but they didn't live with it. Ethan nodded. They only needed it to pass at a glance. Then came the billing structure. Ethan matched the format to internal templates used by Red Brook Medical Billing. Layout, coding patterns, even spacing. It lined up exactly. Claire. Not suspicion anymore. Proof. The timeline sealed it. Every message she sent Lena matched the dates on the fake bills. Every push of concern landed right before a new piece of evidence appeared. It wasn't messy. It was built. By the time we finished, there was nothing left to guess, only what to do next. Douglas had started to change. He didn't say it out loud, but I saw it. He stopped watching me like I was about to forget something, stopped stepping in when Claire spoke over me. He started sitting a little further away from her. Doubt had finally found him. I asked Ethan to set the meeting. No notice, no warning. He looked at me for a second. You're sure? Yes. He nodded. Then we do it clean. Thursday afternoon. Claire walked in first, like she always did, confident, controlled, like nothing could touch her. "This feels dramatic," she said, glancing around. Douglas came in behind her. He didn't look at me. That still hurt. Ethan didn't acknowledge either of them. He opened the folder and started placing documents on the table, one at a time. Fraudulent billing records. He slid them forward. Internal template match from Redbrook Medical Billing. Another stack. Message timeline showing pattern and intent. Printed texts followed. Handwriting analysis confirming forgery. Claire's smile tightened. Unauthorized property transfer through quitclaim deed. That was the last one. Silence settled in the room. Claire let out a small laugh. "This is ridiculous," she said. "She's twisting things because she doesn't want to admit she needs help." Douglas looked at her. "You told me she was getting worse." Claire turned to him fast. "You saw it," she said. "She forgets things. She repeats herself. She gets confused." I leaned forward slightly. "I didn't forget," I said. "You rewrote it." She ignored me. Ethan pushed another document forward. Civil liability, fraud, forgery, property damage exposure. Claire's smile faded. "What is this supposed to be?" "It's what happens next if this continues," Ethan said calmly. Douglas took a step back. "Claire," he said, quieter now, "did you do this?" She didn't answer right away. She looked at him, then at the papers, then back at him. "I was trying to help. No one else was doing anything." "By forging documents?" Ethan asked. "By making sure she got attention," she snapped. "You don't understand what she's like when no one is watching." I held her gaze. "There was nowhere left for you to hide." She went still. Ethan slid the messages closer to her. Dates, sequence, pattern, consistency. She looked down, then away, then back again. Every lie she told was sitting right in front of her. Douglas ran a hand over his face. "You told me she was sick. You made me believe that." Claire's voice dropped. "I thought she was." I turned to him. "You didn't just believe her. You chose not to believe me." He flinched. That landed. I didn't look away. "I'm not here to explain myself anymore. I'm here to end this." Ethan didn't interrupt. He didn't need to. I pulled the document from my bag and placed it in front of her. "Sign it." She stared at it. "What is that?" "Reversal of the property transfer, financial restitution, full acknowledgement." Her fingers hovered over the paper. "You're serious?" "Completely." Ethan spoke without raising his voice. "Or we proceed legally with everything we have." Claire looked at Douglas. He didn't step in, didn't defend her, didn't say a word. That was when it broke. Not loudly, not all at once, just a quiet collapse. She picked up the pen. Her hand shook. For someone who had planned everything so carefully, that small shake said everything. "How long do I have?" "Now," Ethan said. She hesitated. Seconds passed. The room didn't move. Then she signed. It took 11 minutes to undo everything she had built. She pushed the paper back without looking at me. No apology, no explanation, nothing. Douglas sat down slowly, like he had just realized what he had been part of. I stood up. Not rushed, not angry, just done. Claire thought she was taking my life piece by piece. She didn't realize she was handing it back to me. Chapter 5. The quiet that followed her exit stayed with me longer than I expected. It wasn't the kind of silence that makes you uneasy. It was the kind that settles in your chest and tells you something has finally ended. Ethan didn't say much as he gathered the papers. He didn't need to. Everything that mattered was already on that table. She signed it all. Every document, every admission, every piece of control she thought she had over my life. Claire didn't look at me when she left, not once. I watched the door close and realized I wasn't shaking anymore. A week later, I got the call. It was Ethan. "They moved faster than I expected," he said. "Her company opened a compliance investigation the same day we submitted everything."
I leaned against the kitchen counter, phone pressed to my ear, and they suspended her, pending full review. I let that sit for a second. That's not all, he added. There's already talk in her network. People are distancing themselves. I almost smiled, not because I was happy, but because I understood what that meant. In her world, reputation was everything, and she had just lost it. I don't need to do anything else, do I? No, he said, you're done. That word felt heavier than I expected. Done. For so long, everything in my life had been about reacting, fixing, surviving. Now there was nothing left to fight. Claire kept falling on her own. 2 days later, I heard more. She didn't just lose her position, she lost her clients. Her firm made a public statement, quiet but clear enough that anyone paying attention understood. No one wanted to be tied to her. No one wanted the risk. In less than a week, everything she built started collapsing, and this time, I didn't have to lift a finger. Douglas came by that weekend. I saw his car in the driveway and felt something I didn't expect. Not anger, not sadness, just distance. I opened the door before he could knock. "Marion," he said. His voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. "What do you want?" "I just need a minute," he said. "Please." I stepped aside. He walked slowly, like he wasn't sure he belonged there anymore. "I heard about Claire," he said. "I'm sure you did." He nodded. "I didn't know," he said. "I swear to you, I didn't know it would go that far." I looked at him. "You didn't know because you didn't want to know." He flinched. "I thought I was helping," he said. "You locked me out of my own life." "I know. You stood there while she erased me." "I know." His voice cracked on that last word. For a second, I saw the man I used to trust, but it didn't change anything. "I lost everything," he said quietly. I tilted my head. "Not everything," I said. "You still have yourself." He shook his head. "No," he said. "I lost you, and that's everything that mattered." Silence filled the room. "I should have listened," he said. "There were moments I knew something wasn't right. I just kept choosing the easier answer. And now? Now I don't have you to come back to." I held his gaze. "No," I said, "you don't." He swallowed hard. "Is there anything I can do?" I didn't answer right away. I thought about the nights I spent trying to explain, the way he looked at me like I was the problem, the way he chose her version over mine. "There was," I said. "You had chances." "I know." "You made your choice." He nodded. "I did." Another silence. "I'm not angry anymore," I said. He looked up, surprised. "Then what is this?" "It's clarity." That landed harder than anything else. "I see things the way they are now," I said, "and I'm not going back." He didn't argue, didn't try to convince me. He just stood there, taking it in. "I'm sorry," he said again. "I know." But it didn't change the outcome. He left a few minutes later, and this time I didn't feel anything pulling me after him. That part of my life was over. Lena came by that evening. She stood at the door for a second before knocking, like she wasn't sure if she still belonged. I opened it before she could hesitate any longer. "Mama," she said. Her voice broke halfway through the word. I pulled her into a hug. She held on tighter than usual. "I almost believed her," she whispered. "I almost chose her over you." I closed my eyes for a second. "But you didn't," I said. "I was scared," she said. Everything she said sounded so real. "That's how people like her work," I said softly. She pulled back, looking at me. "I'm so sorry." "I know," I said. "You came back to me. That's what matters." She nodded, wiping her face. "I don't ever want to lose you." "You won't," I said. And I meant it. Some things had been tested, and they held. A few days later, I went back to my mother's house, the one Claire tried to take, the one that started all of this. I stood in the doorway for a long moment before stepping inside. Everything looked the same. The same furniture, the same quiet light, the same feeling of home. But I wasn't the same person who had stood there before. I walked slowly through each room, letting it settle in. I had lost things. A marriage I thought would last, a sister I thought I knew, but I had gained something more important. I knew exactly who I was now. No confusion, no second guessing, no need to prove anything to anyone. I stepped out onto the back porch as the sun started to set. The air felt different here. Cleaner, simpler, mine. For a long time, I thought strength meant holding things together, keeping the peace, trusting people even when something felt off. I was wrong. Strength is knowing when to stop explaining, when to stop fighting for people who already made their choice, when to walk away and not look back. Claire thought she was taking my life from me, piece by piece, but all she really did was show me what needed to be removed, and once it was gone, there was nothing left to hold me back. So I stepped forward, not as the person I used to be, but as someone who finally understood her own worth. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Would you forgive someone who tried to erase you, or would you walk away like I did? And if this felt familiar to you, if you've ever had to rebuild your life from something that broke it, stay with me, because sometimes the end of one story is exactly where the next one begins. If this story meant something to you, stay with me, share your thoughts below, and follow along for more stories that might feel a little closer to your own.